Hi, and welcome. I am really excited today for this discussion I'm having with Şirin Köprücü, the Curiosity Coach. Shirin and I met a few years back as a result of a mutual acquaintance and became connected through the Coactive Training Institute, where we were both trained as coaches. And as a curiosity coach, I find Shirin to be mindful, resourceful, totally creative, and a breath of fresh air when it comes to how we have to constantly challenge ourselves and how our world and everything around us is constantly changing and approaching all of those changes. And in some instances, the anxiety that comes along with those changes with curiosity. And I want to give you a quote. With curiosity, nothing is too difficult, unimaginable, controversial, or impossible. Please help me welcome Şirin Köprücü. Shirin, it's great to see you today. How are you?
Very good. Thank you very much, John.
Yeah,
How are
well,
you?
I'm great. I'm great. Listen, it's pretty winter here where I am. I'm in central New York. I know that you're in the Washington D.C. metro area. How's the weather down where you are?
Much better now. We had a few weeks of very cold weather, and I'm celebrating today because I could take out my dog and he got a good run.
Very nice. I'm kind of missing taking my dogs out. I take them out, but the snow here has been so deep and kind of crunchy lately. It's hard for them to walk around. So I think they're kind of missing that. So we're just kind of stuck with going up and down the driveway for now.
Oh, it totally resonates for me. But I think one thing we might notice is maybe they're not taking it so hard as we think they might be. So staying curious as
Yeah.
this is our topic.
I think, you know what? I think that you're really onto something there. So I would really like to just dive right in if we could, because, I'm really fascinated by your work as the curiosity coach. So I'm wondering if we can maybe just rewind the clock for just a moment, because I'd like to just understand a little bit more about what inspired you to become a coach to begin with. Could we start there?
Thank you very much for that question, John, because I am so inspired by the coaching methodology. It is, it goes back to my curiosity when I lived and worked internationally and then got into leadership development at a global level. I noticed that the research that was available was making everyone curious about cultures. However, when we trained professionals on intercultural communications or intercultural work, I noticed there was the risk of possibly assuming that the individual was a perfect representation of their culture. What would happen is when we profiled um, someone profiled someone with cultural assessments, they would come and say, "It's very interesting. My profile is although I'm from the U.S., is exactly like the profile of Japan or the profile of Brazil. What does that mean?" So what I noticed is when we want to facilitate good work simply through intercultural differences, we might run into the risk of not quite understanding the individual or individuals where they are coming from. And coaching helps us truly connect with the individual. And it was very complementary to my work in global leadership development.
Wow. What a powerful testament to coaching and what it can bring. I'm really speaking of curiosity, I've really been looking forward to having you on the show because I'm fascinated with this tagline that you have as the curiosity coach. So I'm curious. So what does that mean from where you're sitting? So when you think about yourself as the curiosity coach, how does that curiosity fuel leadership for yourself or for others? How do you see it?
Thank you very much for asking, John, because I thought about this a lot and I wondered if I was possibly making up something that I shouldn't make up. And you can tell me as well, as a fellow coach and as
Thank
a
you for that
master
laugh.
coach. I'm still learning. My curiosity is still on about this. However, firstly, so I am getting known, as you said, as the curiosity coach. One one aspect of that is that I am very inspired by curious leaders in the innovation space, entrepreneurs, as well as intrapreneurs, innovators in the corporate space, and all those leaders that want to emerge with strength, evolve in the change environment. So I tend to work work well with curious leaders. The other aspect of the curiosity coach is curiosity is powerful as well as vulnerable. It can quickly face judgment. And I try to show up as the curiosity coach uh, in very supportive ways. I try to show up without judgment, which I know is is a big thing in coaching anyway. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. And just you mentioned that you're kind of on the front end of your coaching journey in many ways. And, even as someone who has a master certification in coaching, I find the challenge that you've thrown out there to be difficult as well from time to time. So what I appreciate here is that you've taken a core aspect of what it means to be a coach and you've positioned yourself immediately with that core principle of curiosity. So I think that strikes me as quite brilliant. And I do think that exploring and mining, if you will, the curiosity of our clients and getting them into that space has a lot of value, as you've aptly pointed out.
I am happy to hear um, that I am on the right track with this, that you see the importance of it as well. We learn about the importance of self management as coaches. And I feel like in this world of incredible change, rapid and constant and global, anyone may come in with a good idea. And if that idea either gets shot down quickly or doesn't even find voice, then not only the individual, the team, organization, but its communities can will not benefit from that idea. So yes, I'm making the self-management part in my
Mhm.
the curiosity an important aspect when coaching curious leaders.
Thank you for mentioning self-management as a coach. I just as a quick aside here, I my belief is we really don't talk about that enough with one another as coaches. So perhaps at some point in the future we could come back and have a conversation about self-management because that feels like a really important topic. What do you think?
It is, and it it shows up out of nowhere. Some a lot of times, right? We show up. Oh, where did that come from?
Absolutely. Well, a part of one of the reasons why I felt like it'd be really great to have a conversation with you is this notion of curiosity and being a coach that embodies the curious spirit really dovetails nicely with a lot of practices that I'm aware of and that I use as a coach. So I'm wondering if maybe we could just spend a few moments talking about where your work and my work might intersect a little bit and see if we might co create something new and different here. What do you think about that?
That sounds very exciting.
Yeah. So you're the curiosity coach. And what I'm hearing is that you have found a lot of value in working with your clients, particularly in a multicultural, intercultural context, thinking about self management. And to me, I see an intersection here, and the intersection is really with a practice called nature journaling. Now,
Mhm.
nature journaling is a pretty specific practice that is pretty common with naturalists, as you might imagine, outdoor enthusiasts, etc. And it generally involves going out in nature and sketching a few things and making some notes and that sort of thing. But there's a part of that practice that involves curiosity. And the first part of that practice is to simply stop what we're doing and to take note of what's happening. So the question is, what am I noticing? And that feels to me like an extraordinarily curious question. So I just wonder what your thoughts are about how maybe nature, other aspects of our world intersect with some of the work that you're doing on the curiosity side of the house.
That is such a you have just offered me such a wonderful plate, I'm going to say, John. And it's so simple. It the power is in its simplicity. What do you notice? That question, I think, is the key to so much success and so much impact.
Yeah, I agree. My sense is that, and of course, I kind of glossed over what I think, and I think you would agree as well. One of the most important parts about all of this, and that is to simply stop or to try to stop or to slow down. I don't know about you, but I have a really rich inner life. I do a lot of thinking. And,
Mhm.
for me to be curious, it's really, really important for me to, at a minimum, slow down my thinking so that other ideas can come in to this space. So when you work with leaders in either a leadership capacity or in your capacity as a coach, what are some ways that you have found to be successful in helping people to slow down so that they can tap into that inner curiosity that we both know everyone really has? So, what are some ways that you work with your clients?
That is such a great question. And I just want to mention also my little value proposition. As a curiosity coach, I work with curious leaders to make progress on hardest things, whatever is appears hard to them, through broader curiosity and personal accountability. When we say hardest things, those don't really show up very quickly. One may think, "Oh, I'm just not good in public speaking. I'm I'm not good in selling." And And when we focus just on that, we may be missing what are the judgments we are making about ourselves or sales. So what I have found is one is curiosity about the field of coaching,
Mm.
um, how it can help identify the hardest things and possibly offer a solution. And for that, how do I connect with others? I will say with really curious conversations. Not even to talk about coaching, but for instance, in a networking event, getting really curious about what they're trying to do. And as we converse, asking, oh, what makes that hard? What inspires you? And really getting to the core of the topic. So when we take time to talk, I think to make conversations, that helps professionals slow down because we're so results oriented.
Exactly. That really does resonate with me. I was just having a conversation with someone this morning, not a coaching conversation, but it's interesting that we fall into a little bit of a pattern, I think, because we get results from how we operate, how we lead. And along the way, we get rewarded for that way of leading, if you will. And so that kind of tamps down a little bit of these other ways that we can lead. So just tapping into that sense of curiosity. And I really love this idea of focusing on the hardest things. And just a little bit of an editorial comment here, if I could, and that is, I think that's the real value of coaching. Right? People are facing really challenging and difficult things in their life, decisions, events, circumstances, and as coaches, a lot of times I think we say, our clients are stuck or what have you, but there's some real resonance there for me. And so my belief is that helping our clients tackle those really thorny, challenging, difficult problems is where the real value is. So I absolutely, that really resonates with me.
I'm so glad to hear that. It might be that our personal life is so busy that we can't show up with energy at work, and then we judge ourselves based on our skills when the real issue is how can we take care of ourselves a little better,
Yes,
right?
exactly. To that end, what are your thoughts about, you know, if I'm a leader listening to this podcast and I'm a leader who uses coaching as a way, one of my part of my leadership portfolio, what are some maybe small daily habits I could consider that might help sharpen or cultivate my curiosity? So if I'm someone who doesn't think about myself as a very curious person, I have a lot to do, have a big to-do list. What are some things that you found helpful that I could actually pick up and start doing that might help cultivate more curiosity?
Wow. I will answer in two tracks if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
What I have realized is when we notice something different, when we're curious, that can have a lifetime of legacy, s- right? When we have an idea or when we wonder about something, when we're curious enough to gain traction with others, build partnerships, look at it from multicultural perspectives and if it's global work, like multi-country, because geography, history, my experience might all make matter. And then from the perspective of what is really the impact I'm trying to create? What do I really want to do with this idea? So when we look from all these different perspectives, then something new may show up, something new, and a small difference we do in our ways of approaching our curiosity might make a big impact, no matter depending on where we are on that journey, from gaining traction to influencing to impacting. And the second way of looking is, I think, through the wisdom I have found in quantum negotiation, where so quantum negotiation is defined as the art of getting what you need.
Thank you.
There are all these terms. It's good to clarify, I guess, for
Yeah,
us being
yeah,
on
I'd
the
I'd
same
never
page.
heard that before, so that's thank you for that.
You are most welcome. And in quantum negotiation, we realize the potential of negotiation can be infinite when we focus more on on our needs and on the needs of others. So when we want to do something, when we have an idea, if we, as you said, take the time to slow down and ask ourselves, are we in a scarcity space? Do we feel like we need to exert power, or what do we need to feel more in abundance, more powerful? And then ask also, what does the other side need to feel that way? The second question is, are we in listening mode, or are we in an assertive mode? And how is the other side? When we are going to meet, how does the other side feel? So there are 5 dimensions, human dimensions we center across. One is the first one, the cognitive. The second one is the emotional. The third one is social. What do I need to be respected in this situation? What does the other side need to be respected and trusted in this situation? The fourth one is, how do I feel? Do I feel energetic enough for this situation? And how does the other side? And that might get you curious about the timing of the conversation, for instance. And the last one is, what inspires me for this situation, and what inspires the other side for this situation. So when we slow down and think through these questions, we might create a much bigger potential um, for our interactions and for what we want to achieve.
Yeah. I really love that structure that you just laid out, and it feels very like a nice framework, if I could say it that way. And I often think about what you just described as, there's the coming at things from the inside out and from the outside in. And I think you kind of touched on a lot of those things. This idea of helping our clients get curious about their own stories is something that's kind of standing out to me in this conversation. Just a moment ago, when we were talking about the hardest things,
Mhm.
you mentioned, the stories we tell ourselves. And in some ways, I think, right, see what your thoughts are here. In some ways, I think as a coach, our job in some ways is to pull out that thinking, sort of lay it out so that we can both see it, and let's get curious about what this thinking is, how you're thinking about it. It doesn't mean
Mhm.
that we're trying to change that thinking or some way, but let's just look at it and see what's there. And this just feels like a very powerful way to move forward. And I think that that's what you're saying here. I'm just reinterpreting it. What are your thoughts? What am I missing here?
Thank you very much for sharing what you are noticing, and I think you're noticing something so crucial that I hadn't made the connection this way. But stories help us connect, right? When we prepare with the framework I just mentioned, then we will be ready for the stories of others, where they are coming from. If we sense a little bit of resistance, meaning we notice that resistance, right? If we are prepared, then we can say, can you share where you are coming from? And mainly we're saying, what is your story here? What are, what is your story here? And there is a lot of science about stories help connect, right?
Yes.
Uh, So I think that what you just said is very powerful, and that's what one goes at. And what quantum negotiation teaches us, and I've learned so much from Dr. Karen Walsh, is that we become flexible. When
Mhm.
we prepare that way, we become flexible enough to hear other stories and share our stories and connect.
What you said, to me, it was so powerful. And I want to relate it back to something I've been thinking about a little bit lately, and that is, I know this feels a little off script, but competency two of the International Coaching Federation framework, which is about a coaching mindset.
Mhm.
And within that coaching mindset is this idea of what you just said, preparing ourselves as coaches to enter into the space of curiosity with our clients. So you just outlined a really brilliant way, I think, as a coach for me to experiment with a little bit as I get ready for my next client. So just a lot of gratitude to you for sharing this framework with us.
Thank you. I'm glad you are finding it helpful as well. I I love connecting multidisciplinary fields, and so I'm learning so much also from your nature walk methodology.
Uh, well,
Thank
thank
you.
you for that. You know, I, so maybe we can just chat about that for a little bit. My belief is that we're all connected to this world. Now, we're not apart from this world, we're a part of it. And I know that that sounds a little cliche ish in some ways. And, I picked up a lot of curiosity and love of nature from my grandparents.
Mhm.
But for you, what is it, if we could go in that direction, what is it about nature or the natural world that inspires your curiosity as a coach?
Oh my God. Um,
Probably a too big of a question, right? Maybe we can narrow it down to one or two things.
I think it is so important. I don't know if I'm in a perspective here to enjoy nature as a coach, to take time to be in it and get surprised by what one might see out in the nature, how things might be interconnected in the nature, how seasons change, for instance, um, how life and death are natural in nature.
Yes,
So many, yes, so many things we can notice that can feed that curiosity and difficulty of self management.
exactly. I think that when you're describing that, particularly the seasonal transition, I and you to a lesser extent, but I feel like I'm really, really fortunate to live somewhere where
Mhm.
I do have 4 distinct seasons. A lot of, and that's just a personal thing because I appreciate it. It's sort of the seasonal transition is sort of a cue for me to do a couple of things to take stock of, kind of look inward a little bit, but also just to get curious, right? Being more curious about what that transition might mean. And maybe there's a metaphor that for my life. I'm at a point in my life where I'm going through lots of transitions. A lot of us are. And so
Mhm.
just kind of connecting my personal experience to what's happening in the natural world is a way for me. And now that we're having this conversation, I'm feeling much more resonant with it. It's just a way for me to continue to cultivate and grow my curiosity, which my belief is the key to being an effective coach. So I want to know
Mhm.
what you think about that for yourself.
You inspire me with your curiosity, John.
Mm. Well, that makes me feel really good since you're the curiosity coach.
Absolutely, absolutely, and, the curiosity I think yeah, part of the curiosity coach is getting inspired by the curiosity of others. What are you noticing that I am not noticing? And I'm very appreciative of what you just shared about yourself, and it it makes life so much more resourceful when we get into each other's perspectives and look from that perspective.
I love what you just said. Being inspired by the curiosity of others. And just hearing you say that out loud makes me believe that you are in the right niche for yourself with this idea of being the curiosity coach. There's just something about that that feels powerful yet simple. And in that simplicity, kind of amplifies the power of being the curiosity coach. So it's hard for me to articulate it, but there's just a lot there that I really, really love. So thank you for having this conversation with me so far.
You are very welcome. May uh, I ask a question? I'm
Abs-
noticing something.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, I really appreciate how you say that I'm maybe in the right space. I'm enjoying it very much. I am curious about if everyone, if most of us are curious, and then there are some of us who simply don't believe that ki- things can change. Things can change. What what shows up for you when I ask that question?
I think what shows up for me hearing that is I think that people get stuck because they kind of get up in their heads a bit,
Mhm.
and it kind of creates this almost tunnel vision way of looking at things. And I often ask people in coaching, where do their ideas or where does their inspiration come from? And I will tell you that I've never had anybody tell me that their inspiration comes from sitting at a desk staring at a computer camera and talking to me. Their inspiration generally comes from some sort of physical activity or some sort of shift, or they're out kind of walking through the woods, or they're have taking their dog for a walk or something like that. And that's when the ideas come in. So I think that even though I may not intellectually think about myself as a wildly curious person,
Mhm.
that curiosity is a capability and a skill, and it's also innate. My belief is that most of us, I can't say all, but I would dare to say the vast majority of people have curiosity already. It may have been tamped down, it may have been sent on a sideways journey somewhere, but it's there. So identifying it and cultivating it and growing it, my belief is that's our work. What do you
Yes.
think? That sounds like a big speech.
I uh, I agree. I maybe we want to ask we want to tell our audiences that there are more questions in them than they are asking themselves.
Yes. I think that you put your finger on something really important there. And that is, how can I perhaps get more curious about how to be more curious?
Right?
Yeah. What?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering, what if I'm a leader, right? And so you've sold me on the value of being more curious. And it feels a little bit like a habit I need to develop, perhaps. So if we were to approach it from that perspective, I'm a leader in an organization and I see the value that you're helping me see with curiosity. But when I walk through the doors of my office, I kind of go into automatic pilot. I start looking at my to-do list and my emails and other things. Is there some way that you found helpful to disrupt that automaticity or that automatic thinking so that I can focus just a little bit of energy on being more curious?
What a great what a great question. As I'm launching the Curiosity Coach, I look forward to working more with clients who specifically say, Shirin, I'm a curious leader. I want to be in a coaching relationship with you. However, however, what I have noticed is regardless if someone describes themselves as curious or not, if they take the time to figure out in a coaching relationship or not what they want and how their choices can get them there, I think that is already quite some wisdom to build into our boring days. What do you think?
I
You've asked a big question and
no, I totally agree with that. That is, as I sit here and just think about curiosity, it just feels like it's such a natural thing that all of us should have more of. And at the same time, it seems elusive in some ways. It's sort of like I mentioned, I have an intention. I want to be more curious. I want to understand more about what's going on with me. And I want to understand a little bit more about what's going on with you and what the intersection of those two things are. But breaking free from kind of my habits on a day-to-day basis can be a bit challenging. So I think kind of going back to what we talked about a few moments ago, which is the idea of stopping, pausing, slowing down in some way all of the activity creates a little bit of an opening for us to be more curious. So I can't really put my finger on a method or a way just yet, but my sense is that there really is something there. And I'm a meditator. I don't know what your self care practice is, but I find when I am able to pause and slow down and just be, that things seem much clearer to me. What's
Mhm.
And so I wonder if you think that is really, in its most simple way, a good way to begin this practice of being more curious.
Such a rich conversation here, I think, John. And I think what we are trying to um, perhaps articulate is um, the energy of curiosity. And a fellow coach, Matteo Tassi, from oh, he's Italian. I
Okay.
forget where he's located. Recently, said to me, Shirin, I think curiosity is energy. What do you think about that, John?
I listen, I agree. I think that there is a lot of wisdom and value in thinking about curiosity or any other aspect of our lives that we're trying to develop as energy. Because, and the reason why I like that is because I I can't describe it because I'm not that articulate, but I can feel it when I'm in that curious space.
Right?
And
We
my
can
guess
feel
is
it.
you can feel it also. And even if you're not a coach, if you are a leader who's listening to this podcast, my prediction is when you're really curious about something, there's a feeling that comes along with that. And when you said that, it automatically took me to, of course, automatically go to thinking a little bit. But I believe that there's a lot of truth there. So what I'm going to focus on with this little nugget of wisdom is what is the energy of curiosity? So when I go through my day today, I'm going to set an
Mhm.
intention to just, when I become curious, just to slow down a little bit and notice what is that energy? What does it feel like? Where actually do I experience that energy? And as I'm talking out loud about this right now, I'm feeling actually a little more energized about my day. Right. So I think that there's a lot of power there in thinking about curiosity, not as a thing on a piece of paper or a book that you pick up, but part of who we are, part of the energy of just being alive in many ways.
S-
You've
So
inspired me.
yes, so wonderful how you said, how you started elaborating on the energy and in sharing an inquiry with our listeners. Really, I think that it is such an important question to ask. What is, when I am curious, what is the energy of my curiosity?
Right.
Or what is the energy of my curiosity, period? Because if we, perhaps, if we sort of monitor that and we see differences, different energies around different curiosities. I also learned a lot from the book titled The Curious Advantage,
Thank
where they
you.
outline 7 elements of being curious. I'm not going to share every one of these, but every it varies from sense of wonder to the curiosity when we want to build something, to curiosity when we experience something and we gain some insights. And it seems to be to me that every one of these curiosities might have a different energy that in the end, however, makes us, what else could I notice? Or what do I notice here? At the same time, might there be different energies that are sort of, um, well, I'm almost going to say, might there be different energies that might lead us to different types of curiosities? And that's when we want to step back to a more neutral zone. And to your point about meditating or pausing or going on a nature walk, how can I notice things in more neutral ways?
Hmm.
That's what's showing up for me now.
Right. Yeah, sort of I love that neutral space where it feels very non-judgmental in some ways.
Very non-judgmental, right? So what when we say what is the energy of curiosity, what is the energy of letting go of judgments, attachments, old ways of thinking, existing ways of thinking? And then you're right, maybe a practice of meditation, but also other ways that get you into neutral zone, art, sports, following sports. It could be different for every person, I feel like.
I agree. And, and I believe what we're kind of circling around here just a little bit is let's stick with curiosity, whether it's curiosity, intuition, resilience, adaptability, whatever quality, right, that we're focused on. We as humans on this planet, I believe, have the capability to cultivate and develop those as skills and competencies or capabilities or energies that we can use in other parts of our life. And I think a lot of times those energies are suppressed for a variety of reasons. Maybe there was some trauma that we've experienced, or perhaps we have a story we've told ourselves that you shouldn't be this way or be that way. And so I think that these are things that can be developed. They don't just sit on a shelf and you either have them or you don't have them. Curiosity can be developed, it can be cultivated, it can be expanded. I mean, that's just my opinion, my belief. What are your thoughts? You're the expert I'm tapping into here. So, what are your thoughts about that?
Absolutely. Absolutely, John. From my very humble professional experience, what, when we look at the journey of curiosity to legacy, we can, as you say, when in the day do we have a moment when we relax and ask ourselves, am I in any type of perspective about my day here? How is it going? How am I feeling? What am I notice? What else can I notice? Two, when we have an idea, what is the value of it for others? Design, the field of design thinking gives us a lot of good questions we can ask to form
Yes.
value propositions, right? Business models. And then the shared the shared value model is um, another model I'd like to use to think of partnerships. What are partnerships models out there that can make us curious? Communications models. And then the global mindset. How are people different, and how can we work together better? What are their conditions? What kind of questions do we need to ask then? And then, last but not least, what is really the impact I seek here, and what impact are others seeking? How can we collaborate? And in all this journey, life is not very easy, right? We can
Right.
hit a lot of judgments, we can hit a lot of failures, and then we see the importance of knowing and practicing the growth mindset, um, the belief that we can improve our abilities through effort and feedback, get feedback. So ask questions to get feedback, and we can do this so well with AI too now. That's it. We have a support there.
Right. Right. Yeah. You know, I could spend the rest of the day having a conversation with you about curiosity, kind of inside out, all of the things that we've chatted about. I'm wondering, as we kind of wind down here just a little bit, how can listeners who hear this, how can they connect with you and to learn more about your work?
Right now, best way maybe the LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn as Şirin Köprücü, the curiosity coach. Please link in with me. I look forward to conversations. Every conversations around curiosity do start with conversations. I'm curious about what you are trying to do, what you haven't even voiced to yourself, possibly. Um, please come with that, and I look forward to our conversation.
Beautiful, beautiful. And just not to put you on the spot too much here, but if there's one piece of advice. So I'm someone who wants to be more curious. I want to expand my ability to be curious. So what's one tip that you would give me that I can use for the rest of today to kind of help me start down that path?
I will say don't hesitate to imagine.
My favorite song.
Yes.
I absolutely love that. So your advice to me is don't be afraid to wonder with an O or to imagine thinking forward, kind of outward looking. I really appreciate that very much.
Look around and imagine, and if the song Imagine is going to help you think, I would listen to that song. Yes, imagine.
I'm going to make a commitment here that when we hang up and disconnect, I'm going to play that song before I do anything else just to see what energy it brings me.
I will I will do the same, John. I really appreciated this very rich, curiosity filled conversation.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I know that you have a lot of other things that you could be doing with this time. So I'm really, really grateful to you. And I know that all of our listeners are as well. So thank you so much for joining us.
You're you're very welcome. And may I share just one more thing that comes to my mind?
Most definitely, please.
In the context of our rapid and constant change, our curiosity cannot be asleep.
Ah, thank you for that. Because I believe that, yes, I think for a lot of us, me included, right? My curiosity can take a nap from time to time. So I think what you're suggesting is let's keep it front and center and be wide awake.
To dance together and evolve and make sure to emerge with strength if we can.
I love that. Well, the next time that I'm in Washington, D.C. area, we are going to connect live and in person, and maybe we'll do a quick little dance. What do you think?
Oh my God, I cannot wait for that day, John. Thank you. Thank you. And I will say the same to you.
Thank you. Well, it has been absolutely my honor to have you here today, and I look forward to connecting with you very soon.
Thank you, John. Have a good day. And to all our listeners, have a good day, evening, wherever you are.
Fantastic. More to come.
Thank you.
Wow. What a fantastic conversation. I'm so deeply grateful to Shirin for spending time with me and all of us today. And I don't want to drop names, but the person who introduced us to one another, his name is Tommy Goodwin. And I just am so grateful to you, Tommy, if you're listening to this, for the introduction. If any of you want to connect with Shirin, please feel free to do so. There's information in the show notes. And particularly if you want an introduction to this idea of being curious and exercising your curiosity in a deep and profound way. And also, if you want to focus on or pursue quantum negotiation so that you can gain greater creativity in working well with others through enhanced curiosity. Thank you, Shirin, and thanks to all of you who are our faithful subscribers and listeners. Be well, and we'll see you soon.